Please welcome Kerryn Fewster.
Thanks very much for having me this afternoon. This question up here, if you can't help yourself and your people embrace uncertainty and ambiguity, how will your career or business actually survive? I recently asked a client of mine that question, and to protect her, let's call her Josie. So Josie is a member of the executive leadership team. She actually leads one of the largest groups in her organisation. She's admired for her intellect and her technical ability, and she's really well loved. She's been there for a while. The industry that she's in is actually being absolutely shaken up, one of the many impacted by a couple of the royal commissions we've got underway at the moment. I asked her this question, and her response to me was, "It's all right, it'll slow down soon. As soon as the ambiguity and uncertainty stops, then I can get back to doing what I'm doing." I said, "I don't know about that, Josie." I mean, I didn't want to be harsh, but my response to her was something like this: "It won't. You're actually going to be dead in the water. There is nothing else that's going to work here, and it is that simple. If you really think that the ambiguity and uncertainty is going to stop, you need to look at how you're doing things differently." And that's really what I want to talk to you about this evening. And I'll reference Josie as we go throughout this story. I haven't seen her here tonight, so he's hoping we're all good to go and she can identify herself. I was actually talking to her about the need to become a change addict, and being a change addict means that you love it. You look for it, you seek it out. You actually choose to embrace the opportunity with change, and you find the opportunity in it. Can I just see a show of hands out there? Put your hand up if you are someone who loves change. Hands up. Keep your hands up if you are also really confident in leading yourself through change and your team through change. Okay, a couple of drops, there's a couple of What about if I substituted the word change for uncertainty and ambiguity? Any hands? Oh, look at you. Well done. Well, you know what's interesting is Josie told me yes to all of those things, but again, I had to call her on it. I said, "I don't think so. I really don't think so." She was unable to really move forward because the industry that she was in was demanding transformation, and she was unsure about how to progress through it. So about 3 years ago, my organisation, we partnered with QT, and we did that because we wanted to better understand what is the difference really between change and ambiguity and uncertainty. So we had a view, because we consult in the space, we work with leaders and organisations, but we wanted to get some data behind it. And lots of different information came out of the research project, which continues to go today. But one of the key areas was that less than 10% of our leaders in Australia who've been through the assessment program have got a clear tolerance of ambiguity. What does that mean for us? If we're actually wanting to compete in our local market, in our national market, in our global market, if we're not able to actually embrace and step towards the ambiguity. This particular photo, for those of you who can see it, it's a lady who's standing looking, should I go in the ocean or not? She's got fantastic information. The sign quite specifically says, "Shark sighted today, enter water at own risk." So she knows what's going on. She can decide how much risk she wants to take and what the consequence will be of getting it wrong. But we don't always have that luxury in business, and that's the challenge that we really need to tackle and work out what can we do differently about that. So uncertainty is absolutely everywhere. We know that. Think about it's 6 weeks in really effectively to the new financial year, to the new year, the new decade. Think about the things that you didn't see coming. What did you not expect? What changes have already been placed upon you? What conversations are underway that you weren't expecting? And really importantly, how have you gone about responding to it? A recent survey from KPMG actually says that still managing the uncertainty and ambiguity for 50% of CEOs is still considered their number one threat to their business. And so those who kept their hands up and put them up even higher when I substituted the word from change and ambiguity, let's catch up later. I need to probably learn from you as well, because they're few and far between, because it is a genuine threat for organisations. We've also know that anxiety actually manifests itself in uncertainty. The correlation between the increase in uncertainty and the anxiety is really quite clear, and there's evidence to support that. And unfortunately, our organisations and our workplaces are really surrounded by degrees of uncertainty. And there is a staggering figure up here, $13 billion per year is the associated costs of mental illness in Australia. Surely that should be sending out alarm bells, and it's linked to our ability to change and what we're going to do about it. That's obviously not directly about stress, it's about the all flow and on costs of presenteeism, absenteeism, lack of productivity, etc. But the thing is that change is only escalating, and I can guarantee you that. I've been working in this sector for 20 plus years, and change today, it'll be faster tomorrow and faster the next day. And we have no choice but to get better at it. But the situation is, in fact, that our capacity to deal with it is actually on the decline. And that's because there is an abundance of it, and we don't quite know where to go or what we need to do. Our brains have got a certain way of responding to change. And these three areas, so we freeze, that means I stand here, I'm not going to do too much about it, and I'm not going to move too far. If I'm stuck, I've got two options. One, people are going to run past me, or worse still, people are actually going to run over me. Both don't feel so good, and that's where I'm stuck. Josie elected this one. She also elected the flight option, which is just get out of here. I don't like it, I don't like the way it feels, I'm going to make myself disappear away from this. You can't outrun it. And probably the one that takes the most amount of energy and the most fruitless is the one about trying to fight it, because you cannot stop the tide of change, ambiguity and uncertainty. What we need to do is find a better way. So here's Josie in the corner. That's actually what she was looking like, terrified the whole time, struggling with fear. But here's her peers. They actually were there looking at things differently, standing up tall, taking different information, and just saying, let's look up and out rather than down. So working with Josie to try and help her identify how do I get on the other side was the challenge. You'll all recognise Don Price for Atlassian. He's got this great statement that we totally agree with, leaders in change. And it is that we at Atlassian go through an exponential change every single day. So we have no choice, absolutely no choice but to change. They can't do anything about it. And I love this line, and when you actually get used to it, it actually becomes quite addictive. Can you imagine how different you would be, your workplace, your team, if you stepped towards change and said, how good does this look each day, as opposed to Josie, who's on the previous slide? And the key is that we need to develop our change muscle. We all have one. We can't actually overtly see it, unlike this lovely lassie. But what we need to do, like any muscle, we need to practice. We need to put ourselves out there and make sure we're rehearsing and understanding, what do I do about change? So the change muscle can be stimulated and built using two areas. So yes, we need data and facts and figures, but most importantly, we need an open mind. And the thing is that any article you read, any research, anything you do from this position about how do we actually embrace the uncertainty and ambiguity, you will never see a statement about let's build a bigger Gantt chart. Let's actually sit in a longer plan, let's get stuck there. You'll never see that. I'm not suggesting that data is not important. Of course it is. We make decisions based on evidence from data, but that's not actually what makes the difference. This is the way we used to be told that we needed to deal with change. Just buckle down, weather the storm, it'll pass. But when Josie went for that approach, she was like this. It was like this. It was a barrage, and it was a freeze approach. It wasn't helping her, and she was totally stuck in that position. What we were working with her on is actually a different mindset. So to choose optimism over the weathering and trying to buckle down because it's just not going to work for you. So what you need to do is look for ways to calm that fear response. And we can calm that down really quite simply. We need to pay attention to this tiny little part in the back of our brain called the amygdala that controls our emotions. When we're fearful, that we actually respond in a way to protect ourselves, and it makes sense. It's got a great purpose. But the thing is that it's not needed the way it once was when, in the days of the caveman, when the saber-toothed tiger was after you. We don't need it to the same degree, but it still activates in the same way. So we need to calm that down and flip it to say, why don't we look for the opportunity rather than the fear associated with the change, because that will then allow us to pivot. We can look at things from a different perspective. Breathing. So we're all doing it. We're sitting out there. We're great at it from day one. And it's a simple technique, obviously, but what it does is it will calm down the amygdala. If we can calm down your reaction to the fear, to the nervousness, it doesn't have to be an outright fear. It could just be, not interested. I don't want to do this anymore. I want something different. If you can calm that down, and it's as simple as breathe in for 4, through your nose that is, Hold it for 4, breathe out for 4, repeat it 4 times. I'm not suggesting that that's the science that's going to solve all problems, but it certainly is going to calm you down enough to be able to respond rather than react. And when you do that, you can actually choose to be open-minded. You can make a choice to say, I'm going to do things from a different perspective. Working with Josie around what does an open mind look like, it was incredibly challenging because she didn't see that that was successful. What got her to her position, she's the CFO of this organisation, was core skills, detail, and it was planning, and it was being able to put evidence forward. It wasn't about flipping and going over and saying, how about? Look at this scenario, why don't we give something else a go? So if you choose to be open-minded, it then actually also allows you to choose to be curious. Ask lots and lots of questions. The moment you flip that and start to do something different rather than sitting in a position of saying, this is all too hard, it's happening again, how often do you hear people, and ideally not yourselves because you're here for a reason, say it's someone else, they're doing it, they don't know what they're doing, someone's creating this change. That's right, someone is. And your job is to actually understand it, so choose to ask the questions. Once you choose to ask the questions, it also gives you a choice to choose diversity. Go and hang out with people who are different to you, not in your team, who don't actually have your same skills and specific function. Learn from others, listen to them, listen intently, pick up different cues so you can actually be much broader in your viewpoint about what the change is all about. Once you choose diversity, then you can also choose to try something new, even if it means you're going to fail. I remember posing this option to Josie. She was given an opportunity to lead one of the transformational streams in the organisation. And honest to God, she just was, no, I'm not up for that. And the reason was, she said, I don't want to put myself out there any further than where I already am. I'm already scared. I'm worried every day. I'm not sleeping properly. Why on earth would I put myself forward to try and start something new? But that's exactly what she needed to do, because the message otherwise was, I can't do anything differently. When you choose to try something new, it also gives you a choice to actually step forward. And you can actually go to a different place. You can learn different things, even if you don't know where you're going. Again, if you choose to stay still, there's 2 options. People run past you, people run over you. We need to make sure that people are moving forward. And it is simple as a choice. I'm not saying it's always an easy process to go through, but that's exactly what it's all about. Ultimately, if you do that, you are making a choice to remain relevant. I know that's a bit mean to suggest that you'll be irrelevant otherwise, but I promise you, working directly in the change space around ambiguity and uncertainty, if you're not able to be the person that says, why don't we try something different? Why don't we go and ask them more questions? Why don't we learn from others? If you are the person who says, I'm just going to actually buckle down and weather the storm, that does not build your relevance or your value in the organisation. And I'm talking government, corporates, small, medium, large. I'm talking all organisations, because we work across lots of different types of businesses. So I encourage you to absolutely make the choice to remain relevant. So I guess what I want you to do is flip your mindset. Choose to embrace ambiguity and uncertainty. What will that look like for you? How will you actually go about doing that? What's the one thing that you can do tomorrow that you didn't do today? What's the one thing you can stop doing? So when someone says, hey, here's an idea, rather than you hear your little mind saying, oh God, here we go again, just choose something different and go, all right, I'm going to listen out. I'm actually going to pay attention and see if I can look at it from a different perspective. So do you actually know how you go about responding to ambiguity and uncertainty? One of the outputs from the research project with QUT has actually been an assessment tool. So you get data that says, well, this is actually where I sit. This is how I respond when I'm faced with that degree of uncertainty. And once you've got that information, it becomes power. You can then decide, well, what do I do about it? It was interesting, I asked Josie whether she would like to do this to give us some insights, and as you may now know, Josie, her response was, God, no. I really, really don't want to know any more than what I already feel. Josie was tapped on the shoulder just before Christmas last year, not to come and get a ham, but because she was out. And it really had a lot to do with the fact that she was unable to move forward and adapt. And I encourage you to make the choice to flip your mindset. And so love change, fear staying the same. I quite love this quote, and it's interesting. Maxime Lagacé, he's actually a 27-year-old Canadian ice hockey player Who knew? Who happens to actually be really quite verbose in his quoting and a prolific book writer as well. But what I particularly like about it, it enables me to hook off the back of him, put my little quote in there. So love change, fear staying the same, because my view, and I really think it's right, is because the fear will render you irrelevant. Thanks very much.